Hello everyone, my apologies for being late. Instagram kind of changed their interface and I was like, how do you go live? So I had to Google and I found out, yes, big plus button, got it. Thank you Instagram, always changing things, we love it. But if it's your first time here, hi, I'm Alicia. I am one of the master trainers on the Stretch It app. And today's topic, which I think you will like a lot, deep hip opening flow. Deep hips today. Also, announcements. Our affiliate program is happening, 30% commission for a year for referring your friend, and they then get 20% off their first purchase. We also have our Intro to Splits program that begins on Monday. And again, today we're doing deep hip flow. So one of the advantages for joining a live is to ask questions in real time. Maybe there are special requests for deep hips. Yeah, so definitely drop those in the comments and I'll let the comments run. I'll let the chat run. But quickly, just covering a few like pillars. The word deep indicates maybe a stretch that is intense. And intensity comes in many forms. You can make a stretch intense by holding it for a long period of time. So you are increasing the passive hold for said stretch. You could also make it intense by introducing load. So for instance, actually I'm going to try to get this. There we go. I'm going to get that kettlebell. Here we go. So a simple hip stretch that you might have seen is the horse stance, where hips are turned out from the hips, knees and toes face the corners, and you try to hold this as low as possible. And maybe you can make it more dynamic, going up and down. But adding load, meaning you have a weight to help with the depth and you hold it there, naturally, since you're adding load, the hold time will decrease. Because again, you're dialing up intensity measures by load. But if you didn't have the kettlebell or any type of, load, maybe you'll turn up the intensity by holding it longer. It's either or, right? It's not necessarily choosing a tough stretch because that is subjective. What's tough for me is not going to be tough for you and vice versa. So it's not so much you choose the toughest stretch, although I would suggest you don't choose the toughest stretch because if you can't get into the position properly, are you truly targeting the areas that you wish to improve the range of motion on? As an example, let's get on the floor. Here we go. If you have a hard time going into your butterfly stretch, meaning you're tilted back, your legs are high, but because this is a hard stretch, you might categorize it as a deep stretch because it hurts and it's painful. But you're not actually getting anything out of it because your hips are not in an ideal position to stretch the hips or stretch the inner thighs. You're leaning back, your knees are high. So it will be better for you in that instance to choose the lying down version where your soles of feet together and your knees are wide, and maybe you spend more time practicing this variation so the legs could actually drop. And once you've seen improvement in that, then maybe you can move on to the seated version. Another example is the straddle. If you force your legs in this wide angle, but you're leaning back, you can't reach forward, nothing's happening, it's painful because straddle, as you know, involves a lot of muscle groups at once. It feels quite intense. But if you want to get something out of it, adjust the position. So maybe you bring the legs in closer. Maybe you bend the knees. Maybe you're in front of something. If you're at the gym, that there's a bar in front of you or something that of course doesn't fall on you. So make sure whatever you're holding on to is sturdy and anchored. You use that to help you lean forward, and maybe you can move in and out of it. And if you're not adding load, maybe you hold that forward lean for 2 minutes. That makes sense versus forcing yourself into a position that you can't properly execute. That will naturally evolve over time. That's the best part, right? Because you don't have to stay stuck in all these variations forever. They're just stepping stones for you to get to where you would like in terms of modifying the position so you can get the most out of the stretch, so you could properly target what you're looking to increase range of motion wise. And then you get to change the modification from there when it gets easy, and then you can maybe hold it for longer, change the position again. Maybe you can add load. Another example too is in a lunge, where if you have this kettlebell, you can do an active lunge where you don't lower your back knee and you use it to get a little more depth. Yeah, so that's a great variation too. Also, this is a little heavy, but I'll demonstrate this. Pullovers are S tier, not only for shoulder mobility, but it's a fantastic back strengthener. And that's when, ideally you'll be over a weight bench, but you take the weight overhead, and naturally because you have space behind you, you take the weight as low as you can manage. So, of course, there will be no floor. You'll be on something much higher. And you practice getting your arms as low as you can. You wouldn't necessarily choose the heaviest weight because another intensity factor, another dial we could add to the equation is the range of motion you are introducing. So if you are introducing a fair amount of range, meaning you're going way back. So again, just envision the weight bench at a gym. You're sitting across it, where you perch the shoulder blades across it, hips and legs are off one side, and your arms can go down the other. You could even lay flat on the bench instead and just have your shoulders closer to the back edge so the arms can go down behind you, right? I like the cross version because you get a wicked stretch, not only in the shoulders, not only great back extension, but yes, that's what we're getting into. The back extension is insane, which is a nice expansion for the rib cage as well. And I'll get to this question. Someone asked about morning back pain. What stretches help to reduce it? Any stretch. I know that's a stupid answer. You just got to move your back around because, just to put it plainly, you've been still for the last 6 to 8 hours. So it's kind of like when you're nursing an injury where if you don't have or if you don't move it, when you get up, it's painful. But when you start moving around, you're fine. It's kind of just a lot of this, a lot of that, okay? Now, again, when you're increasing the range of motion, another dial to consider in terms of making it intense. Because now that you're going further, it's going to be tougher to bring it back to the starting point, which means you might be handling a weight that is lighter so you're able to cover that ground and that higher degree of movement. Because if you choose something heavy, then you're shortchanging that range and you're basically kind of missing the point of the stretch itself. So another quick, I guess I could tie this in for morning stretches, and also because this is a deep hip flow class, but if in the morning, anything that twists, anything that side bends, anything that hinges forward and back is going to be your friend. Now, something you probably noticed is anything in the category of deep will require you to hold it at some capacity. Now, we already discussed that you might not be holding it as long as you would without weight, that the time is shortened when you introduce load in some way. But I think it's nice to do these deeper stretches from the longer hold category before bed. Because naturally, when you're still, you automatically by default slow down your breath, and that helps to downregulate your nervous system so you can get out of that fight or flight response. So a deep stretch, let me do a hip one. A deep hip one, for instance, is the seated figure 4. Specifically, the seated shin stack. This to me is one of the deeper stretches because it is now tackling not only your glutes, but the rotator muscles that are underneath the glutes, like closer to your actual hip capsule. That this in itself feels deep in nature because you're externally rotating, you're flexing, and now you're adding the forward angle in your torso. Again, it can feel quite intense. But a few modifications. Oh! If you're unable to properly stack your legs, you can try extending one leg out. If you're unable to lean forward, you might have to work on one side at a time and then prop it against your opposite leg and maybe introduce some tilt forward and back. You might just have to eliminate this version completely because if you're like this, maybe the seated figure 4 is a better option to start with. Once you've mastered this in terms of you fairly getting this easily, meaning it feels nice, you can maybe proceed to the cross. Or you can try the shin stack, but if your knee suddenly starts to rise, it indicates you were not quite ready for that variation yet. Now, whether you are half or full, I love to use blocks for this because now we have support. We could lean forward and on the blocks and stay here for 2 minutes. That in itself is a deep hip stretch. One, because it's quite intense in terms of the sensation. Number 2, we're holding this deep, intense sensation for 2 minutes. And while you're here, you can introduce some gentle shifts side to side. You could go forward and back. Maybe this is the first portion of the hold, kind of just easing in. And you stay. And as I said before, by default, you will naturally slow down your breath. Especially if you know that slowing down your breath and settling on a deep rhythmic pattern is going to help the stretch feel better. Because your breath pattern is how you communicate to the nervous system. And the nervous system is like, okay, got it, we're fine. It will now yield a little more range for you to work through so that the stretch itself doesn't feel as intense as when you just started the hold. Okay? And of course, you switch sides, and when holding a stretch for like 2 minutes and higher, you want to take a brief reset before you switch sides. And like I had discussed before, kind of exploring what's doable. You could do the seated figure 4. You could do knee up or down. Super. We're stretching together. And as you work through these different variations, it's up to you to find the one that you can hold and settle on. right? So if you found that maybe this one is okay, even though your knee is high, when you lean forward, you still feel your left butt cheek stretch, fine. If the knee is lower, maybe you have the block in front of you and you lean over, but naturally you'll feel the hamstrings of the straight leg. But if you're able to stack the shins, same position is to reach forward. And again, I like to invite the shifts because it just helps to break apart that sensation, that intense sensation in the hip. And also, it's kind of like a movement lullaby for your breath, where the swaying encourages a deeper breathing pattern. And if it helps, if it doesn't help in terms of you having a hard time breathing at all, right? If staying still is tough for you to begin with, and now you have to breathe deeply, you're lost. The swaying, again, just kind of helps encourage that deep breath pattern if you have issues integrating it when holding a stretch for long periods of time. Again, forward and back, side to side. Good. Let's bring it up. Now, hips are not just about external rotation. I know that's usually like the category that comes to mind first. Butterfly stuff, straddle, what you just saw, the shin stack. Remember, your hip can extend, rotate, abduct, adduct, flex, okay? So the next one is to work on your extension. And you can hold this for your 2 minutes. You could add arms if you like. You could ease in and out of it. So before you begin the longer hold, you can hinge it back and hinge it forward. Whatever you like, yeah? And then, before you switch, maybe, let me back it up here, you lower your torso down and hold the more turned out variation, and then you can rock side to side. And you hold it one side more, leaning into it, and then you switch. Before you switch sides, you could do a quick arch and curl just to kind of integrate as many things as possible. Super. Now, other foot forward. Shoo. Oh, that was the same one. You drop into the hip. Again, maybe you shift forward and back. And now you hold still, keeping the hip down. Blocks are helpful in keeping the torso as upright as possible. And I would suggest you pad the back knee more with what the hip provides, or excuse me, the mat provides, because the mat's still pretty thin on a wooden floor. And if you're holding this for 2 minutes, you want to be comfortable. Cool. Carefully come out. And now, internal rotation. And we enter the zigzag. So one knee forward, one knee back. And you'll probably notice what you're capable of in terms of sitting upright. So it's fine if you're forward leaning. Cool. Because it might be an indication that you don't have a lot of internal rotation of the back hip, which will allow you to sit center and have the weight more evenly distributed. Maybe you have to move the back heel out more, but you could just try this. Excuse me, just shifting forward and back. And again, I have my hand on the outside as a kickstand to help kind of support this weight shift. If you want, you can try without. That is definitely tougher. And if you want, you could try switching without the hands. If you need, lean back, hands behind, and you got the other side. And working on this hip internal rotation of the back hip. I'm going to push it forward and then settle it down. So we started with butterfly and straddle as examples, but after, let's say we did the shin stack, we did lunge, now we're doing some internal rotation. If you want, you can definitely go into straddle. And this, you can work on your hinging, maybe hands behind the head, or you have blocks underneath you and you keep it forward. You can do the swing here while the legs are out in front of you. You can even invite some side bending and switch sides, not quickly, just kind of spending time on one side and then reaching over to switch. You can even do the cut across and the sweep up. Breath in nice and high, exhale, cut forward. These are nice movements to ease into the position. Now, you could also do the, while you're lying down, legs out in your V on the wall. And hold that for as long as you like. Great stretch to do before bed, by the way, because you're lying down, yay. And it's not so intense. It could feel intense if you force the position, right? But if you don't force your legs down and just kind of let gravity ease them down, it's actually quite relaxing. Especially as I had discussed before at the beginning of the live, which will be on our main feed as a reel, by the way. So you can catch this at the beginning after I wrap this up. From the beginning, when I had described how it could be difficult to enter butterfly seated, you could do butterfly lying down. Same thing with straddle, that if being seated with the legs out in front of you is tough, you can lie down with the legs open on the wall, make sure on the wall so you have support. And it could feel quite nice because now you don't have to worry about your hips position because you're lying down, and you could actually feel your inner thigh stretch. But if you're able to lean forward, this is one of the deepest stretches you can do is straddle, hands down, and making it intense, adding load, or just holding it here forever and ever. Adding different elements of reaches, of side bends and whatnot. It's just nice to kind of settle into. Ooh, and of course, if you're already subscribed to the app, we got lots of hip stretches on there. We got hip classes where it's more like external rotation and then more extension. So it's a ball, it's a party. Cool. Alrighty, this is the time. We've arrived. If you have any questions about what we covered today, about deep hip stuff, and let me know if you had joined in on the demonstrations, how your hips feel. Of course, the demonstrations were quite brief, but if you felt a difference, let us know. Questions, anybody? Comments? Let them rip. Great. Thank you, Allison. And again, don't forget, Intro to Split starts on Monday. Oh, first time, welcome to the Flex fam. Thank you for carving out the time to arrive. Hi, Bendy Ninja. Great hearing and seeing you. Seeing you username wise. Well, the Monday class I teach is a separate thing I do for Stretch It. Oh, the Intro to Splits. Sorry, I don't know when that challenge starts, but I think you can find that out through link in bio. My apologies. I totally misunderstood the question because I have another class I teach on Monday and I automatically went to that. But if you click link in bio, that will provide more information for the challenge when it starts. Super. Intro to splits. All right, everyone. I'm going to hang out for 2 more minutes because I was late. I was late in finding the live button. So if you have any questions or anything you wish to share, I'll be on here for the next 2 minutes. And of course, if you're watching the replay, I am looking at the chat, the live comments, because you won't see these on the screen when watching the replay. So like, what is she looking at? I'm sorry if it looks weird. And if there's anything I'll leave with you is don't get too caught up with not being able to perform an entire routine. If you could do 2 hip stretches, meaning if you only have 15 minutes, take the 15 minutes and work on your hips. Yes, it might not be as impactful as an entire half hour or hour, but it still moves the needle. It still keeps you on track. I was discussing this with my client today. It's okay if you're not always on the express train. Sometimes you have to get on the local. Sometimes you gotta walk, but at least you're going. We're just trying to avoid stagnation. And this is not just for stretching, but if anything that you have in your life that you're looking to improve and you get frustrated because you might not want to, or you don't, how you want to get there, you've already set these expectations for yourself. And of course, when you don't meet them, you don't think they're ideal. Therefore, you don't think they don't count. It all counts. So in this framework of flexibility, sure, maybe you had grand plans to do an hour of stretching, or you're still working on your splits, but choose that one thing that's super challenging for your split and just work on that for the day. If it's your hip extension, Do your a challenging hip extension exercise, even if you're just spending 10 minutes. Again, is to stay on track, because it's not just the physical benefit that you are gaining, but it's the psychological momentum you want to maintain. Is the act of still putting in the work. It's the act of still putting in effort. Even if it's a low effort, it's still effort. And that just helps you to become more consistent when life doesn't present you ideal circumstances to get it going. So, I leave you with that. As always, thank you always for carving out the time to hit the live, to spend time. Make sure you tune in next Saturday, 1 p.m. Eastern, and hopefully I get to see you again soon. Take care, everyone. Always a pleasure.